Giant Cowboy returns home and froze when he saw his black wife and son being auctioned. He shocked the west. The dust cloud behind Eli Stanfield settled as his horse came to a stop at the edge of Redemption Ridge. 3 years of war and bounty hunting had changed him. The townspeople who remembered the quiet blacksmith's apprentice now stared at a giant. 6 feet 8 inches of weathered muscle and scars. Whispers followed his every step down Main Street. The sound of an auctioneer's voice carried on the wind. Eli followed the noise toward the town square. A crowd had gathered around a wooden platform. Men in fine suits examined people like livestock. Women in bonnets clutched their purses and bid with subtle nods. Eli's blood turned to ice. Rachel stood on the platform with their 8-year-old son Levi pressed behind her skirts. Her head held high despite the chains around her wrists. Her dark eyes scanned the crowd with sharp intelligence. Levi peeked out from behind his mother's protection. Both wore the simple clothes Eli remembered from 3 years ago. A well-dressed man in a black coat raised his hand. $2,000. The crowd murmured approval. Silas Blackwood from Texas. His reputation for cruelty preceded him even here. Eli pushed through the crowd. Sheriff Abel Thornton stood near the platform. His badge caught the sunlight. Conflict played across his weathered face. "Stop this auction." Eli's voice carried over the crowd. "That's my wife and son." Thornton shifted uncomfortably. Judge Cornelius Wakefield adjusted his spectacles from behind the auctioneer's table. Legal documents spread before him like a deck of cards. "I'm afraid that's impossible," Wakefield said. His voice carried the authority of education and position. "These documents clearly state you died in battle 2 years ago. Your debts transferred to your property." Eli reached for his military discharge papers. Clean and official. Proof of life and service. Wakefield barely glanced at them. "Forgeries are easily obtained these days. These seizure papers bear my official seal." The crowd began to snicker. A giant trying to understand legal matters. Too simple to grasp the complexities of law and documentation. Blackwood smiled from his position near the platform. Eli pulled crumpled bills from his jacket. $200. His entire military savings. The crowd's laughter grew louder when Blackwood waved the money away like an insult. Martha Henderson watched from her shop doorway. Her face showed the distress Eli felt in his chest. An elderly man with a medical bag stood among the crowd. Doc Harrison. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Rachel caught Eli's gaze. Her fingers moved in subtle patterns against her skirt. Signals, messages, intelligence gathering while appearing helpless. Time was running out. The final bids would conclude within hours. Blackwood's men stood ready to transport his purchases south immediately. The system had turned against them. Legal manipulation wrapped in official seals and judicial authority. But Rachel's signals suggested something more. Hidden preparation, gathered intelligence. The quiet dignity of a woman who had not spent her time in captivity idle. The auction adjourned until dawn. Eli watched Blackwood's men escort Rachel and Levi to a guarded storehouse behind the courthouse. His massive frame cast long shadows in the fading daylight. The crowd dispersed with satisfied murmurs about tomorrow's final sales. Martha Henderson approached cautiously. Her shop apron still bore flour stains from the day's baking. She glanced around before speaking. "Your wife has been asking questions. Smart questions about territorial law and property rights. She's been teaching the other families their legal protections." Doc Harrison emerged from the dispersing crowd. His medical bag hung heavy at his side. Gray hair framed intelligent eyes that had seen too much suffering. "Walk with me, Eli." They moved toward the old church where Doc Harrison had set up his practice. The building stood empty now except for medical supplies and books. Lots of books. "You still remember what I taught you during the war?" Eli nodded. The memory came flooding back. Field hospitals and supply tents. Doc Harrison taking time between surgeries to teach a young quartermaster how to read, how to analyze documents and track supplies, how to spot discrepancies in official paperwork. Judge Wakefield has been running this scheme for months. Forged death certificates, manufactured debt documents. He splits the profits with buyers like Blackwood. Doc Harrison pulled out a leather portfolio. Financial records and correspondence filled the folder. Evidence of a corruption network that stretched across 3 counties. I've been documenting everything, waiting for the right moment to expose it all. Your case might be that moment. Martha Henderson arrived at the church with a basket of food. Her movements were deliberate and careful. She had been planning this. I've been smuggling information to the families in the storehouse. Your Rachel has been memorizing every law I can find about illegal slavery and territorial rights. Eli studied the documents Doc Harrison spread across the table. Numbers and financial records. His old skills kicked in automatically. Pattern recognition, mathematical analysis. The same talents that had exposed corrupt supply officers during the war. The discrepancies jumped out immediately. Judge Wakefield's personal accounts had grown substantially over the past 6 months. Deposits that coincided perfectly with auction dates. Money transfers to accounts in other territories. He's been falsifying property seizures across the region, creating fake debt records, forging death certificates for men still alive. Doc Harrison smiled grimly. The military quartermaster emerges. I wondered if 3 years of bounty hunting had dulled those analytical skills. Martha Henderson returned from another trip to the storehouse. Her face showed both worry and determination. Rachel wants you to know she's identified at least 12 other families who were seized using forged documents. She's been teaching them to recite territorial law word for word. Eli spent the night poring over financial records. His massive hands moved delicately through papers and ledgers, cross-referencing dates and amounts, building a mathematical case that would be impossible to dismiss. Dawn approached too quickly. The sounds of crowd gathering drifted through the church windows. Final auction day had arrived. Martha Henderson burst through the door. Her usual calm composure had cracked. They moved up the timeline. Blackwood wants to leave within the hour. Judge Wakefield is calling for immediate final bids. Eli gathered the evidence into organized stacks. Each document supported the next, a mathematical proof of systematic fraud. But would anyone listen to a giant they considered too simple to understand legal complexities? The 3 conspirators moved toward the town square. Eli carried his evidence in a leather satchel. Doc Harrison brought his medical bag and testimony. Martha Henderson rallied every sympathetic townsperson she could find. The crowd had doubled overnight. Word of the unusual auction had spread to neighboring settlements. More buyers, more spectators, more people who saw human beings as property to be purchased. Rachel stood on the platform again. This time her posture was different, straighter, more confident. Her eyes found Eli in the crowd and held his gaze steadily. Levi stood beside his mother instead of hiding behind her skirts. The boy's chin was raised in defiance. 8 years old and already showing the courage that would define his character. Judge Wakefield called for opening bids. Blackwood immediately offered $3,000. Other buyers joined the bidding. The price climbed rapidly. Sheriff Thornton positioned himself near the platform. His hand rested on his gun belt, not in threat but in uncertainty. A man caught between competing loyalties. Eli pushed through the crowd. His size parted the mass of people like a ship cutting through water. The leather satchel in his hands contained enough evidence to destroy the entire corruption network. But first Rachel had something to say. She stepped forward on the platform. Her voice carried clearly across the square. Not the voice of a victim, but the voice of someone who had spent months preparing for this exact moment. I invoke my rights under Territorial Law Section 4. Any person sold into slavery in territories where such practice is illegal may demand immediate legal review. The crowd fell silent. Judge Wakefield's face darkened. Blackwood stepped forward angrily. Rachel continued reciting territorial statutes from memory, word perfect, legal precedent and constitutional protections. the self-taught expertise of someone who had turned captivity into education. Eli smiled grimly. His wife had been busy. Now it was his turn to shock them all. Rachel's voice rang across the square with absolute authority. She recited section after section of territorial law, constitutional protections, legal precedents, every word precise and unwavering. Furthermore, Territorial Statute 12.7 clearly states that any seizure of property or persons based on falsified documentation constitutes criminal fraud punishable by federal prosecution. Judge Wakefield's face had gone pale. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air. This was not supposed to happen. Victims were supposed to remain silent and compliant. Preposterous nonsense, he sputtered. Legal documents bearing my official seal cannot be questioned by uneducated persons. Rachel smiled coldly. Article 15 of the Territorial Constitution grants all residents the right to legal representation and document verification. I formally request immediate examination of all seizure paperwork by qualified legal authority. The crowd murmured in confusion. This was not the auction they had expected. Blackwood stepped forward angrily. I came here to complete a legitimate purchase, not to listen to desperate fabrications from condemned property. Eli moved through the crowd like a force of nature. His massive frame created a path toward the platform. The leather satchel in his hands felt heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. She's not fabricating anything. His voice carried the authority of absolute certainty. Every word she spoke is accurate territorial law. Judge Wakefield laughed dismissively. And I suppose a simple giant like yourself is qualified to verify legal statutes. Eli reached the platform. He opened his satchel and began removing documents, financial records, account ledgers, mathematical calculations. The evidence was organized with military precision. Judge Cornelius Wakefield, personal banking account number 4789, deposits made on March 15th, April 22nd, May 18th, and June 30th. Each deposit occurred exactly 3 days after property seizure auctions. The crowd pressed closer. Wakefield's dismissive expression faltered. Eli continued methodically. Total deposits over 6 months, $14,700. Average selling price per auction, $4,900. Your cut appears to be 30% of gross sales. Doc Harrison stepped forward with his own documentation. I can verify these financial records. Bank statements obtained through legitimate channels. Public records available to any territorial resident. Blackwood tried to interrupt. This is meaningless speculation designed to disrupt legitimate business transactions. Eli pulled out another set of documents. Silas Blackwood, Texas plantation owner. Previous purchases in violation of territorial anti-slavery statutes. Outstanding federal warrants in 2 states for human trafficking. The crowd began to shift restlessly. What had seemed like legitimate business was revealing itself as systematic criminal enterprise. Martha Henderson stepped forward with her own evidence. 12 families seized using identical forged death certificates, same handwriting, same official seals, same manufactured debt amounts. Rachel's voice cut through the growing chaos. I formally charge Judge Cornelius Wakefield with document fraud, illegal imprisonment, and violation of territorial constitutional protections. Sheriff Thornton found himself at the center of a crisis he could no longer ignore. The evidence was overwhelming. The legal challenges were legitimate. His choice would define not just this moment but his entire character. Eli spread the financial records across a makeshift table. His analysis was thorough and devastating. Cross-referenced dates, mathematical proof of systematic fraud, pattern analysis that revealed months of criminal conspiracy. Every seizure follows the same pattern. Forged death certificate dated exactly 18 months prior. Manufactured debt document claiming unpaid obligations. Seizure order signed within 24 hours. Judge Wakefield attempted to maintain his authority. These documents are clearly forgeries designed to undermine legitimate legal proceedings. Doc Harrison produced the original bank records. These came directly from the Territorial Banking Authority. Official seals and signatures verify their authenticity. The crowd was beginning to understand the scope of the deception. Families had been destroyed based on fabricated paperwork. Human beings sold into slavery through judicial corruption. Levi stepped forward on the platform beside his mother. His young voice carried surprising strength. "My papa didn't die in any battle. He's standing right there. He's got his discharge papers and everything." Blackwood made one final attempt to salvage his purchase. "Regardless of these accusations, I have made legitimate bids based on legal documentation provided by recognized judicial authority." Eli's response was swift and decisive. "Purchases made with knowledge of document fraud constitute criminal conspiracy. Federal law supersedes territorial jurisdiction in matters of human trafficking." Sheriff Thornton reached his moment of truth. The evidence was undeniable. The legal challenges were legitimate. The moral choice was clear. He stepped toward Judge Wakefield instead of Eli. His hand moved to the handcuffs on his belt. "Cornelius Wakefield, you're under arrest for document fraud, illegal seizure of property, and violation of territorial anti-slavery statutes." The crowd erupted in shocked voices. Some supported the arrest. Others protested the disruption of their entertainment. The auction platform had become a courtroom where justice finally prevailed. Blackwood backed away from the platform. His armed men looked uncertain. Federal charges meant serious consequences. Human trafficking carried severe penalties. Rachel descended from the platform with quiet dignity. Levi ran to his father's arms. The family embraced for the first time in months, while chaos swirled around them. But the victory was only beginning. The evidence Eli had compiled implicated corruption networks across multiple territories. This single auction had exposed systematic criminal enterprise that stretched far beyond Redemption Ridge. Judge Wakefield was led away in handcuffs. His judicial robes looked suddenly ridiculous rather than authoritative. Blackwood fled toward his carriage with his men close behind. The giant had indeed shocked the West. Not with violence or intimidation, but with intelligence, legal knowledge, and mathematical precision that destroyed criminal conspiracy through undeniable truth. The chains fell away from Rachel's wrists with a metallic clatter. Sheriff Thornton personally removed the restraints from every family on the platform. 12 families reunited in tearful embraces, while the crowd watched in stunned silence. Doc Harrison approached Eli with a knowing smile. He carried a leather portfolio filled with official correspondence. Federal letterheads and government seals marked each document. "There's something you need to know. I've been writing to territorial headquarters for 6 months, reporting suspicious auction activities and financial irregularities." Eli studied the correspondence, letters to federal marshals, communications with territorial governors, detailed reports about corruption in frontier judicial systems. "Your case was the final piece of evidence they needed. Federal investigators have been building a case against Judge Wakefield's entire network." Rachel joined them while Levi explored his newfound freedom. Her legal knowledge had proven devastating, but this revelation changed everything. Their personal struggle had become part of something much larger. "How many other communities?" she asked. Doc Harrison spread out a territorial map. Red marks indicated towns where similar corruption had been reported. The pattern stretched across 3 territories and involved dozens of officials. Wakefield was just one judge in a network of corrupt officials. They've been manufacturing legal documents and splitting profits from illegal sales across the entire frontier region. Martha Henderson arrived with news from the storehouse. The other families were asking questions about their own cases. Similar forged documents, identical debt manufacturing, the same systematic approach to legal theft. Sheriff Thornton approached their group hesitantly. His decision to arrest Wakefield had been the right choice, but consequences remained uncertain. Federal involvement meant his own actions would face scrutiny. I need to make a full confession about my role in these auctions. I knew something wasn't right, but I followed orders anyway. Eli studied the man who had nearly cost him his family. Thornton's face showed genuine remorse, fear mixed with determination to make things right. The federal investigators will want complete testimony about every auction you supervised. Names, dates, financial details. Rachel pulled out small notebooks she had hidden during her captivity. Page after page of carefully recorded information. Names of buyers, amounts paid, details about other victims and their circumstances. I documented everything I could observe: conversations between guards, financial discussions between Wakefield and his associates, evidence of similar operations in neighboring territories. The scope of her intelligence gathering stunned even Eli. While appearing helpless, she had been conducting a systematic investigation. Her legal knowledge combined with methodical evidence collection had created a devastating case. Levi contributed his own observations. The 8-year-old had been watching and listening with remarkable attention to detail: guard schedules, visitor patterns, comments about other auctions and future plans. They talked about big auctions in Denver and Santa Fe. Said Judge Wakefield was just getting started with his expansion plans. Doc Harrison confirmed the boys' intelligence. Federal correspondents mentioned investigations in both cities. Wakefield's network had been operating across multiple territories with increasing boldness. The implications were staggering: hundreds of families potentially affected, thousands of dollars in illegal profits, a systematic approach to human trafficking disguised as legitimate legal proceedings. Martha Henderson organized the other freed families into a support network. Women helped each other process trauma, while men discussed legal options and future security. The community was beginning to heal itself through mutual aid. Sheriff Thornton gathered testimony from every victim. His thorough documentation would support federal prosecutions. Each family's story revealed identical patterns of document fraud and illegal seizure. A rider arrived from the territorial capital with urgent news. Federal marshals were en route to Redemption Ridge. The investigation had been accelerated based on Doc Harrison's latest reports about the Stanfield case. They'll be here within 2 days. They want to interview everyone involved: victims, witnesses, and anyone with evidence about the corruption network. Eli organized his financial analysis into comprehensive reports: mathematical proof of systematic fraud, pattern recognition that revealed the scope of criminal conspiracy, documentation that would be crucial for federal prosecutions. Rachel worked with the other families to prepare legal testimony. Her knowledge of territorial law helped them understand their rights and protections. What had begun as personal survival had become community advocacy. The town itself was transforming rapidly. Citizens who had participated in or ignored the auctions now faced the reality of their complicity. Some expressed genuine remorse while others left town quietly. Blackwood's hasty departure had not gone unnoticed. Federal authorities issued warrants for his arrest on human trafficking charges. His armed men faced similar prosecution for conspiracy and intimidation. Other corrupt officials began resigning their positions before investigations could expose their involvement. The network was collapsing as news of Wakefield's arrest spread throughout the territories. Doc Harrison revealed the full extent of his federal cooperation. He had been serving as an unofficial investigator for months. His medical practice provided perfect cover for documenting suspicious activities and gathering evidence. They needed someone with local access and professional credibility. My reports helped federal authorities understand the scope of frontier corruption. As sunset approached, the Stanfield family stood together in their temporary quarters. The immediate crisis had passed, but larger challenges lay ahead: federal testimony, community rebuilding, personal healing after months of trauma. Eli looked out over Redemption Ridge with new understanding. Their personal victory had exposed systematic injustice affecting countless families. The giant's shocking revelation had become a catalyst for territorial reform. Rachel organized her legal documents, while Levi played with toys donated by sympathetic townspeople. The family was together, but their fight for justice was expanding beyond personal concerns. Tomorrow would bring federal investigators and formal prosecutions. Tonight brought the first peaceful sleep they had shared in months. 6 weeks after the auction, federal marshals completed their investigation. Judge Wakefield faced trial in the territorial capital on 17 counts of document fraud and human trafficking. His corruption network had collapsed entirely. Eli accepted the position of legal advocate for Redemption Ridge. His analytical skills and integrity made him the natural choice for restoring faith in local government. The townspeople who once dismissed him as a simple giant now sought his counsel on complex legal matters. His first official act was establishing transparent record-keeping for all property transactions. Mathematical verification systems prevented future document fraud. No seizure could proceed without multiple independent confirmations. Rachel opened the town's first integrated school in the renovated courthouse. Her curriculum combined practical education with legal rights awareness. Children of all backgrounds learned reading, arithmetic, and constitutional protections together. Her teaching methods were revolutionary for the frontier. Students memorized territorial statutes alongside multiplication tables. Legal knowledge became as fundamental as basic literacy. The school attracted families from neighboring communities. Parents traveled days to enroll their children in an educational system that promised both knowledge and protection from future injustices. Levi thrived in the new environment. His natural intelligence combined with his parents' guidance made him a leader among his classmates. The trauma of the auction platform had transformed into strength and advocacy for other children. He helped his father organize legal documents after school. Mathematical skills inherited from Eli merged with legal knowledge learned from Rachel. At 9 years old, he was already showing potential as a future advocate. Martha Henderson's appointment as deputy sheriff created the most effective law enforcement partnership in the territory. Her community connections combined with Sheriff Thornton's reformed dedication to justice established unprecedented security. Their first major case involved tracking down Silas Blackwood. Federal warrants had been issued, but his location remained unknown. Martha's network of shopkeepers and travelers provided crucial intelligence. Blackwood was arrested in Denver, attempting to purchase families from another corrupt auction. His prosecution would send a clear message that human trafficking carried severe federal consequences. Sheriff Thornton's complete cooperation with federal investigators earned him praise rather than prosecution. His detailed testimony helped convict dozens of corrupt officials across 3 territories. His transformation from complicit official to dedicated lawman inspired other frontier peace officers. Redemption Ridge became a model for community policing based on justice rather than political pressure. Doc Harrison continued his dual role as physician and unofficial federal correspondent. His medical practice provided perfect cover for monitoring suspicious activities in surrounding communities. Federal authorities relied on his reports to identify emerging corruption networks. The doctor's combination of local access and professional credibility made him an invaluable intelligence asset. The other freed families established themselves as community leaders and advocates. Their shared trauma had created bonds that strengthened the entire town. Mutual support networks helped everyone heal while preventing future victimization. News of Redemption Ridge's transformation spread throughout the territories. Newspapers carried stories about the giant who shocked the West with intelligence rather than violence. Rachel's legal expertise earned recognition from territorial governors. Other communities requested assistance in rooting out similar corruption. Eli and Rachel began traveling to troubled towns as consultants. Their combined skills in mathematical analysis and legal knowledge proved invaluable for reform efforts. Each successful intervention strengthened their reputation. The Stanfield family became synonymous with frontier justice and community healing. Their methods inspired peaceful revolution rather than violent confrontation. Federal authorities used their case as a template for anti-corruption efforts. Training materials for territorial officials included detailed analysis of the Wakefield Network's methods and the investigative techniques that exposed them. The mathematical approach to detecting document fraud became standard procedure. Eli's analytical methods were taught to federal marshals throughout the Western territories. Rachel's legal education techniques influenced territorial education policy. Her integration of constitutional knowledge with basic literacy became a model for frontier schools. The economic impact of eliminating corruption proved substantial. Legitimate property transactions increased dramatically when people trusted the legal system. Business investment flowed into communities with transparent governance. Redemption Ridge experienced unprecedented growth and prosperity. The town that had nearly destroyed a family through systematic injustice became known for protecting families through systematic justice. Doc Harrison documented the transformation in detailed reports to federal authorities. The social and economic benefits of eliminating corruption provided evidence for expanded anti-fraud efforts. 6 months after the auction, Levi won the territorial spelling bee. His victory speech focused on the importance of education in preventing injustice. The boy who had cowered behind his mother's skirts now spoke confidently to audiences of hundreds. Eli's reputation spread beyond legal advocacy. His analytical skills helped settle complex property disputes across multiple territories. Mathematical precision replaced political favoritism in official decision-making. Rachel's school produced its first graduating class. Every student could recite fundamental legal protections alongside academic subjects. They dispersed to other communities carrying knowledge that would prevent future victimization. The integration of practical skills with legal awareness created educated citizens rather than vulnerable targets. Knowledge became the most effective protection against corruption and exploitation. Martha Henderson's law enforcement innovations influenced territorial policy. Her community-based approach to peacekeeping reduced crime while increasing public trust in official authority. Sheriff Thornton's redemption story inspired other officials to examine their own complicity in systemic injustice. Reform movements spread throughout frontier communities as individuals chose conscience over convenience. The federal investigation's final report credited the Stanfield family with exposing the most extensive corruption network in territorial history. Their courage and intelligence had protected countless future victims from similar exploitation. Redemption Ridge had truly lived up to its name through the power of truth, dignity, and unwavering commitment to justice. 3 months later, a traveling reporter arrived in Redemption Ridge. His mission was documenting the story that had become legend throughout the territories. The day the giant shocked the West with intelligence instead of intimidation. Samuel Morrison carried credentials from newspapers in Denver, Santa Fe, and San Francisco. His editor had commissioned a comprehensive investigation into the corruption network's exposure and the community transformation that followed. Morrison interviewed dozens of townspeople. Each conversation revealed another layer of the remarkable story. The mathematical genius hidden behind a giant's intimidating exterior. The legal scholar disguised as a helpless victim. The child whose courage bridged adult conflicts. Martha Henderson provided detailed accounts of the underground intelligence network. Her role in smuggling information and rallying community support had been crucial to the peaceful resolution. Most folks expected violence when they saw Eli's size. Nobody anticipated the ledgers and legal documents. He fought them with their own weapons turned against them. Sheriff Thornton offered complete testimony about his transformation from complicit official to dedicated lawman. His honest assessment of systematic corruption provided valuable insights for other communities. I knew something was wrong, but I followed orders anyway. The Stanfield family showed me that following orders isn't the same as following justice. Doc Harrison revealed the full extent of his federal cooperation. Months of correspondence and evidence gathering had laid groundwork for the territorial investigation that followed Eli's dramatic revelation. The federal authorities needed local documentation to build their case. Eli's mathematical analysis provided the final proof they required for prosecutions. Morrison spent an entire afternoon with the Stanfield family in their new home. The modest house near Rachel's school reflected their commitment to community service rather than personal wealth. Eli's office contained mathematical instruments and legal reference books. His analytical work had expanded beyond Redemption Ridge to assist reform efforts throughout the territories. Rachel's study was filled with educational materials and constitutional law texts. Her teaching methods were being adopted by schools across the frontier. Knowledge had become the most effective weapon against future injustice. Levi demonstrated the legal knowledge his mother had taught him. At 10 years old, he could recite territorial statutes and explain constitutional protections with remarkable precision. Morrison asked about the auction platform moment that had shocked witnesses. Rachel's recitation of territorial law had silenced the crowd and exposed Judge Wakefield's vulnerability. I spent months memorizing every legal protection I could find. Knowledge was the only weapon they couldn't take away from me. Eli explained his systematic approach to exposing the financial fraud. Mathematical analysis had revealed patterns that proved systematic corruption beyond reasonable doubt. Numbers don't lie or make political compromises. The evidence was undeniable once organized properly. The reporter documented the broader impact of their victory. Federal investigations had exposed corruption networks in 12 territories. Hundreds of families had been reunited. Millions of dollars in illegal profits had been recovered. Other communities had requested assistance in implementing similar reforms. The Stanfield family's consulting work was spreading their methods throughout the frontier regions. Morrison interviewed Judge Wakefield in his territorial prison cell. The former magistrate showed no remorse for his crimes, but admitted the thoroughness of the case against him. That giant was supposed to be simple muscle. Nobody mentioned he could analyze financial records better than trained accountants. Federal Marshal William Hayes provided official statistics about the investigation's results. Wakefield's network had been completely dismantled. No similar operations remained active in the affected territories. The Stanfield case provided the breakthrough we needed. Their evidence and testimony were crucial for every subsequent prosecution. Silas Blackwood faced trial in Denver on federal trafficking charges. His conviction would establish important legal precedents for future anti-slavery enforcement in frontier territories. Morrison's final interview was with young Levi Stanfield. The boy who had hidden behind his mother's skirts now spoke confidently about justice and community responsibility. People think my papa shocked everyone because he was big and smart, but he really shocked them because he proved that being right matters more than being powerful. The reporter asked about the family's future plans. Eli intended to establish a legal advocacy training program. Rachel wanted to create a network of integrated schools. Levi hoped to become a territorial judge who would protect families instead of exploiting them. Morrison concluded his investigation with a community celebration. The entire town gathered to honor the family that had transformed their community through courage and intelligence. The traveling reporter's articles would spread the Stanfield story throughout the nation. Their peaceful victory over systematic corruption became a model for justice advocacy in frontier communities. Federal authorities incorporated their methods into official training programs. Mathematical analysis and legal knowledge proved more effective than traditional law enforcement approaches. The legend of the giant who shocked the West continued growing. But the real story was about ordinary people using extraordinary courage to protect their community through truth and dignity. Redemption Ridge stood as proof that justice could prevail over corruption when citizens chose knowledge over ignorance and community over complicity. The Stanfield family had indeed shocked the West, not with violence or revenge, but with intelligence, legal knowledge, and unwavering commitment to protecting other families from similar injustices. Their story would inspire generations of frontier advocates who understood that the most powerful weapons against oppression were education, organization, and the courage to demand justice. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.